What's up, Driven to Win Nation? Jake Isaacs and my good buddy Chaz Wolfe
Whoop,
coming
whoop.
back at you. Today, Chaz, I would love to talk to you about this idea of building a personal brand.
Mm,
I think that we live in this really interesting time where people have access to social media and they can use that and leverage that as a tool to really grow outside of their local community. Where, 20 years ago, even you could be a big fish in a small pond, but to like break into the national spotlight took an immense amount of work.
yeah, yeah. I think it's a
So
huge tool.
it's a huge tool. For all of the negative things that come with social media, there are just as many positive things, and it depends on your outlook on life, I guess, on whether it's a hindrance or a helpful tool. The thing that frustrates me the most when I work with younger people, though, is that there's this belief that I can just be an influencer, right?
Yeah,
And I think sometimes we lose sight of the fact that in order to have influence, you need to build something to have influence over. What are your
sure.
thoughts around this?
Yeah, I mean, I think that probably the new young entrepreneur, I see some skipping steps, and then I also see some that aren't taking the easy steps that they could take, around this personal branding thing. And look, I don't think that I'm perfect at this at all. I still think that there's a lot of room and wiggle for me and for us, here. But I think that to build something successful or to at least add value. And so I guess I would just nuance your statement with if you haven't built something that gives you authority automatically yet, then add value to someone somehow, and that could be in a myriad of different ways, even though I had built, several successful businesses, I didn't start my kind of personal brand journey talking about, look at me and all the companies that I've built. And, I did this at, 24 and this at 27 and millionaire by 29. And in fact, that rarely came out. I mean, I don't even know if it came out ever in the first three or 400 shows. But we started a podcast with me interviewing other successful people. And through the process of interviewing someone successful and them talking about their, million, 10 million, 100 million, or even a couple $1 billion businesses that we've had on the show, and me being able to go back and forth with them at a certain level of acumen and ask incredible questions. And that's naturally given me authority. And so I've just added value, one, to the people that have been on the show, two, to the audience that are listening, not really talking a lot about Chaz or my exploits or the money that I've made or whatever. Of course, it comes up a little bit here and there, but for the most part, I've just, I've taken a spot where I can add value. I've positioned myself next to someone who is successful, who's also successful. Some of my guests, I'm way more successful than. Some of my guests have been incredibly more successful than I'll probably ever be financially. And that, like, both are okay. I've positioned myself next to both of those. I think the point that I'm trying to make is that even though I had built things, I wasn't like tooting the horn of that. I still think that you could do that. And that's probably where we need to do a better job, as far as like a personal brand and building that out, is giving the opportunity for people following us for Gathering the Kings, or for me, the personal brand of Chaz Wolfe, to just know me better and to talk more about me and what we've done and our family. And so we're starting to do that a little bit more. But you don't have to have built this $100 million business to be able to be an influencer, in my opinion. Influencer is kind of a weird word. I don't really like that word to begin with. I think it's weird that we use it. But if you're going to jump online and add value to other people, great. I think that you should, whether you're small or big, from a revenue or money perspective. I think it's all about who are you adding value to.
Yeah, I love this concept of adding value because I don't think it's actually talked about enough, right? There's this idea of this guruship where you are the end all be all knowledge base for
Right.
something.
Right.
And that just feels real silly to me. Like, some of the most guru type people I know are also the staunchest learners
Yeah.
and the most humble people. And they're not a guru because they're asking people to follow them and to be
Right.
their guru, but they're in the pursuit of knowledge.
Right.
And so the giving value or the adding value in so many different places is such an important key that people just, I think that we just overlook it.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons I think we overlook it, Chaz, is this concept of imposter syndrome, where like
Yeah.
what we know or what we think actually doesn't matter to anyone else. And really, if you could get out of your own way and be a little bit vulnerable about your own experiences, I think what you would find is you being willing to share your hardships, your successes, your whatever it is, actually provides hope, right? Uh,
Yeah.
you have this famous line that you are always trying to transfer courage. And that's what adding value, I think, is.
Yeah. I think okay. So bringing this to the topic of building a personal brand, and I mean, that might look like starting a podcast. It might look like being a guest on podcasts. We had a guy on our show probably 2 years ago who had never had his own podcast, but had been on hundreds of podcasts. And in fact, in that last year up leading to the when he was on my show, I think he had been on like over 100 that calendar year.
Yeah.
And he just made a journey of being on a ton of podcasts. And whether you have your own show or whether you're a guest, you get to tell your story in one form or the other. I'm interviewing other people, but either way, I'm developing authority just from exposure and being on a stage, right? And that's a lot of what the personal brand or authority really comes down to is that the moments that we can capture ourselves, like on a stage or teaching other people or adding value. If you're not teaching anybody, don't feel like you have to all of a sudden become a guru. That's not what I'm saying. But that adding value piece could be, you just talking to another person or you interviewing another person, whatever it is. But and then being able to capture that in video or picture form and being able to tell a story to then other people who are listening, watching from a distance about what you're doing, whether it be inside of your own business or with clients or with guests on your podcast or whatever. And then eventually, that the authority that you're developing is in other people's minds. It's not like something that you're developing in you. Yeah, you might be developing confidence and the ability to communicate clearly and, develop a story and a message. All of those things are very important, I think, in a personal brand. But what you're really doing is you're developing the way that other people think about you or your brand and how they feel when they interact with you and your brand. And so from that angle, it's like, depending upon who you're trying to reach, maybe you have a big business, maybe you don't. Maybe you just start making TikTok videos because it's fun and you want to engage, in a way that makes sense. For example, I kind of use that as a half sentence there because it's basically what Julie and I are going to start doing. I asked Julie a month ago, how I could be more playful with her. Just a spouse question, just a serious like, hey, I want to grow in our marriage. And she was like, I like there's all these like couple challenge videos on TikTok. I want to do something with you. And I'm like, okay, sure. That would not have been what I thought you were going to say. So yeah, we've been like kind of categorizing and gathering some videos together and going, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? What's going to be our first one? And I don't know if anybody's ever going to watch these videos, maybe, but one, we're doing it for us, but here's what's going to happen. I can almost guarantee you, whether there's 200 people that watch the videos or 2 million, there's going to be other people that watch us do things together that are very, very relatable and go, I get that. Like I like them. And they're going to find courage, like you're saying, or they're going to be able to do something in their own lives because they related to us in some way, maybe got entertained, because maybe she'll try to pull a dance move or something or try to get me to dance or something. Who knows? That might be real funny, but hopefully you get what I'm saying is that it can be something that you can add value and maybe you're not even teaching anybody anything. It's just you're relating to people and you're putting yourself out there. And then people begin to just interact with you and your brand in a specific way. And of course, that's when you start tweaking. Like, okay, what is the message that I'm saying, and where are we headed with this, and how do I want to help people beyond just entertainment if that's all I'm doing, and all these other questions that you can bring into the mix.
On a side note, I'm personally here for a I listen but do not judge Chaz and Julie Wolfe video, just because I think that those are hilarious and I would be excited to see what you guys come up with.
Well, it's in the mix, I guess. We'll see. I keep we've taken our TikTok game to a different level. It's not just sharing them back and forth anymore. It's like, okay, Does this make sense for us? Let's categorize it here.
Yeah.
Okay, we've done this for a few weeks now. Like, let's take some action. Let's record the first one. So it should be coming here pretty soon.
As you're building this concept of a personal brand and you're adding value, which I think you do such a fantastic job of, how do you monetize that? Or when do you monetize that? At what point does uh, adding value need to turn into paying the bills?
I think there's probably some bigger questions around like why is the brand being developed? Is it attached to a business? Are you trying to develop a business out of the personal brand? And so this can go 100 different directions, but you've got, influencers who have no business whatsoever. They're just an entertainer. And because they've developed a following, now they have sponsorship deals or opportunities to earn money because of the value that they've added through entertainment. They've developed a following, they've gone viral, whatever, super relatable. People like them, and then now companies are they want to get in those videos or sponsor or whatever. And so for me, it was the opposite. I already had businesses. Gathering the Kings was already in existence. Was an elite mastermind community. We had just launched, so it was newer. But when we launched our podcast, and when I started like really posting on social media and developing this, kind of language around personal development and mindset and winning in all areas and growing my business and my marriage and my family and all these things. It was unto really one, just sharing what I've been doing because I have been doing these things. Not perfect by any means at all. And I'm not the most successful individual that I've seen financially, but I've done some cool things, and being able to share those things and then how those things affect the other areas of my life and just being authentic in those ways. Like that's just part of it, is just sharing. And then of course with the podcast, it was like, I just know tactically from business that the more people I meet that are high level, I'm going to create unique relationships. Some of those I will be able to leverage unto mutual benefit to them, to me, whatever the scenario is. And that's exactly what happened, is that we started interviewing people, and some of those people that we interviewed early on, in the first, 400 episodes, were great contacts who loved what we do. They weren't going to join Gathering the Kings as a member, but loved what we do, and they've supported us in a way of maybe coming and speaking at our events, or they've spoken to our members at in a Zoom room, or I've gone and visited some of these folks and gotten personal mentorship. That's happened a bunch. There's folks that have been on the show and been like, dude, I don't know of someone doing it like this. I'm super drawn to this. I want to be part of what you're doing. And they've been members for years, all the way to, folks that I'm glad I met them, and I'm glad that I get to choose to never meet them ever again.
Exactly.
And so I think that the relationship piece was my initial thought. So get back to your like how to monetize. It was like, well, I think whether you're building an audience for entertainment and then you want to monetize later with sponsorships or other companies or whatever you want to leverage it, or if you already have a business and you're using personal brand to help promote the business, I think that it starts out with just authenticity. I think it just starts out with just you being relatable and just sharing and being valuable to others. And so for me, that looked like me sharing online with just mindset and things that I could give that I thought were valuable to other people. And then of course, me interviewing other, guests that have been successful, pulling out the nuggets. I feel like I do a pretty unique job of interviewing people and being able to kind of go to places that they've never been before in their own story and being able to pull out those nuggets from my audience. And that adds value to people. And they're like, oh, this is interesting. And then eventually what happens is after they've listened to 3 or 4 or 10 or 20 episodes, is that now Chaz is an authority in their life. Whether they're listening to the show because of Chaz or because of just the way that I ask questions, or maybe it's nothing to do with me at all. They like the type of guests that I bring. But again, guess who's on the show? Me. And so that's just naturally built authority, which then eventually has led to either people reaching out to us wanting to join the group or wanting to do business with us or whatever. On the audience side, if you're building an audience, it's about being authentic and being relatable and entertaining in a way to where people are going to go, yeah, I totally relate to that. And then of course leveraging, those eyeballs is basically what marketing is unto, paid sponsorships or whatever it is that you want to do. So you monetize when it makes sense. I think that you can have a target at the beginning of wanting to monetize, but I think if you're if you're only going to like look at each individual video or each individual relationship as like, how do I specifically get money from this person, or how do I leverage this specific thing to make money? I think that authenticity will be really hard to like shine through. I could be wrong on that, but that's just at least the process that I've seen personally, and then as well as many others that I know. If you just lead with, hey, we want to do this, very similar to what I was just talking about with TikTok. I know I've kind of circled this a little bit here, but giving you a long answer. I think there's just a lot to it. The TikTok stuff with Julie and I, like, I'm not starting out with thinking that we're going to be this major, couple that's going to go viral and have millions of followers on TikTok and have all this sponsorship money and make millions from TikTok and YouTube. And I mean, maybe I'm not like closed off on that in my mindset, but I'm just going to make the videos because it's going to be fun to do with my wife. We're going to be super relatable, hopefully, because I have no strings attached to it. And then when good things happen to that, what will naturally happen is that we're gonna be promoting this entrepreneurial couple and life, and people are gonna want to know what we're doing. And oh, by the way, yeah, look, we actually have a community for entrepreneurs, wives, and families. Shocker. And as that blows up, or if it doesn't blow up, that's fine. It will just naturally promote what we're doing because we've just done it authentically without any like malintent, if that makes sense.
It does. It makes a lot of sense. And I think that, what I want to dig down just a little bit more on is the intentionality about how you're doing it. You know, this concept of going viral, I think it's really overblown, right? Like there are the Haley Welches, which is the Hawk girl who, you know, gets to monetize her 15 seconds of fame into something, and good for her. But
Right.
those cases are so rare, right? And I'm not saying that it's not possible, but I think one of the things that early on in our podcasting journey with the Gathering the Kings podcast, there was this idea that we needed to have sponsors, and we needed to be able to like monetize YouTube because of the amount of views and clicks that we were having. All in the meantime, like the podcast was bringing in hundreds of thousands and will be tens of millions of dollars in the future in revenue for the mastermind community because of the relationships that we were set up. But we were so laser focused on like, we need sponsors and we need to get ad revenue from YouTube, and it
Right.
was we were chasing something all the while
Yeah.
creating a vehicle where money was coming into us, and we didn't really have an
Yeah.
understanding of that.
Hey, Kings and Queens, Chaz Wolfe. I want to talk to you about something that's super important to me. We put a lot of time and effort, we meaning myself and my team, into this podcast, into the content that goes out every single day. And if you have been getting any sort of value or insight from this, we want it to be able to reach other business owners too. So we would love if you would like, comment, share, leave a review, post, share again, all of the things on social media, on all the different platforms, or even on the podcast mediums of Apple and Spotify. We would love to be able to get our content into more hands, more entrepreneurs, so they can grow their business as quick as possible. Together, we are building a community of like-minded entrepreneurs who are committed to growing their businesses to new heights. So let's do this. Let's help each other grow.
Marketing is interesting in general because direct marketing has, in a good way, brought amazing insights and trackability to marketing. But for the longest time, that's not how marketing worked. Like I throw up a billboard and we hope it brought us more business. Now direct marketing tells me, okay, this is my exact lead cost. This is exactly how much I spent and how many leads I got. And this is the amount of sales I sold. And this is my conversion ratio. And then therefore I continue to pour into this, or I cut it and I try something different, or I change up the ad or whatever. It gives us incredible insights. But marketing before all that was, let's try this and let's try that. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And sometimes I don't actually even know, right? Sometimes, the branding portion of marketing is I just needed to have the billboard there. It never actually caused anybody to call me, but because of the subconscious of, millions of people driving by the billboard, when the hailstorm came through, they recognized my roofing company was the top one, because at that point they went to Google and I popped up and they were like, oh, I've seen them before. And so did I get that job from Google or did I get that job from the billboard? And that's just where, we can nuance this for days and days. And if you really zoom out, I learned this from Frank Kern years ago, just one of the greatest advertisers ever, in my opinion. But when you really zoom out, it's like, someone listens to this podcast, and then you give them a call to action, and they come over to this landing page, and then they don't check out quite yet because they like the information, but it wasn't quite enough yet. And so from that page, we follow them, and they come over here to YouTube, and they watch this video, and they watch this video. And in that video, there was another call to action. Then they popped over here to this. And 3 layers down, someone from the team sends them a text message and invites them to an event, and boom, they purchased a ticket or whatever. And it's like, well, so what was the actual acquisition point? There wasn't one singular. It was this built form of value, 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 purchase. And so I think that, in essence, is what the personal brand is, but then it's also part of the greater marketing plan, right? I'm just going to add value. I'm not going to try to necessarily see sure, we can track how many people listen to this podcast and how many downloads and how many views on YouTube. And yeah, we can track all that. I'm not saying to not track those things, but what I'm saying is that a lot of times you just don't know until you know that you got this call in, or someone led to someone that, they referred you to that person 3 layers down. And it was because you had this specific review on your page. That just happened to us. Just the other day, we closed $1 million contract in our construction company because the guy, he had a construction company that he had previously worked with, who he had not done research on, at least not very much. And he had a bad situation happen. And so the very next opportunity he gets on, and I can't remember exactly how he got connected to us, the initial point, but that was the very first thing that he did, was he went to our reviews. And there was a couple of projects that were similar to his that made him feel uber comfortable. And then we were the only ones, I think he called 3 people. We were the only ones that called that day. Super professional in our process. And we met with him a couple days later, and we had like a dreaming session with this huge development that he's got for kids. And no one else had done any of that. Was it the review that got him? Well, it was the view that got him to the next step. And the next step was we professionally handled him in a way that nobody else did. And then the next step was we did a little dream session, and we kind of expanded what he thought was possible. And hey, we could do this, we could do that. And we really aligned with his vision and created it and made it come to life a little bit. But all of those things together sold the $1 million contract.
And I want to dig in on that a little bit, because not only did all of those things together sell that project, but intentionality around excellence in all of those things kept moving him to the next piece, right? If at any one time your team or your process had dropped the ball, you would have lost the sale. And so there needs to be this aspect when we're building this personal brand that we're not just creating content. We're creating content, and we're also focusing on the other aspects that need to have some real strong intentionality behind it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that you're right. I mean, some if you can think of it like in a funnel, right? Some of it's top of funnel, and it's engaging, or maybe even entertainment. That top of funnel would be similar. Like this show right now would be fairly top of funnel for us. You might be listening right now, and maybe you don't even remember what my first name is. It might be your first time listening to the show, and you're like, I like this guy's voice. Well, great. I love it. Appreciate you. My name is Chaz Wolfe, by the way. Okay. All the way to maybe you've listened to the show for 2 years. Like I just got a text message from one of our members just last week. We're going to go visit him, and we're doing this workshop, and he got a text from a business owner that he kind of knows. I don't know this individual at all, but this other guy that has listened to our show, he texts our member and says, dude, you have Chaz Wolfe coming to talk at your shop to other contractors. I'm going to have to go there. I love his podcast. And I don't know who this guy is. And I've never seen him, never talked to him. He's never written in to tell me about how he loves the show. And so somewhere in there, there's different layers of a person listening to the podcast, but still that person, even though he knows my name, he knows the show, it's one of his favorites, he's never bought from me, right? And so potentially maybe he comes to this little workshop that we're going to do, and maybe he aligns with what we do for entrepreneurs. Maybe not. Maybe he's not ready to purchase yet. And so maybe he gets value from that. And then he continues to watch the show, or maybe he then talks to the member and I connect him to someone else and we add more value to him. And then eventually he signs up for our mastermind or something similar, maybe comes to one of our events. But it's just a big old funnel, and it's kind of transactional when you think about it like that. But that's really what you're doing, especially with the personal brand, is that I want to expose, myself and or our brand. We want to be relatable. We want to be authentic. Even like with this podcast right now, like this is a fairly interesting topic, of how people are wanting to either build a personal brand or how the personal brand is attached to their business. We've got contractors in our organization, our mastermind community that are like, well, what does my personal brand, my name have to do with my contracting business? And it's like, well, actually, when you have this over here and people find you, and maybe they do find you on your website or maybe even like an Angie's List or something, but then they see all your other stuff. It's like, oh, now this person becomes real to me. That's the owner of the company. Interesting. That's unique. And now I feel like I know them. And what does that build? That builds trust. And now we're over here back in your sales process as a lead, and they're going to close more likely with you because they got to watch a video of you on YouTube or a podcast or whatever you're doing of your personal brand. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think all that's really good. Chaz, the next question that I have for you around this is, you talk all the time about focusing on the thing that really moves the needle, right? And I see entrepreneurs who decide that they need to build a personal brand and they throw all of their attention into creating content, but then the other things inside of their life suffer.
Yeah.
So how do you balance building the personal brand, but also making sure that you're focusing on what moves the needle, and how do you determine what that is?
Yeah. Well, I think that how you determine what moves the needle is through thinking time, where you can, visualize what your current situation is, what the problems or the bottlenecks are, and being able to define what the very next action that needs to be taken. That's the absolute most important. But outside of that, like when you're analyzing a personal brand and maybe how high on the priority it is, do I think everybody should do it? Yes. Do I think it should be your sole focus? No. Unless you don't have a business at all and you've got a job and you clock in, clock out, and that's your money source, and this personal brand on TikTok or whatever is going to be your thing, then cool. Like outside of your job, do that, because that's obviously what's going to move the needle. You have nothing right now and you're going to build an audience. Cool. So you make videos and you do cool things that you're trying to, add value and be authentic and maybe go viral and okay, fine. But outside of that scenario, you've probably got a business if you're listening to this and you're thinking, how does my personal brand or me being on a podcast or hosting my own podcast or posting on social media have anything to do with my business? And it's like, well, actually it has a lot to do with it, but it doesn't have so much to do with it that you should spend every waking moment thinking about it. And you can, in the personal brand, you can be a thought leader. You can add value to people, like, via the way that, like mindset, and here's how you should think and become better and personal. Like, sure, you could do that. I've seen people do that. I've seen just people talk about their business, just on their personal stuff, talk about their business. In fact, I'm thinking of one guy, he does windows and doors in Dallas, and he just a huge contractor, but he posts constantly, almost every single day, multiple times a day, about these beautiful windows that they're installing. And he has this amazing process of, installing some of these incredible projects, and it builds authority to his windows and door business, obviously, but it's about how they do it and their brand and his enjoyment of it, and these huge homes. And it's kind of like the who's who. If you got windows and doors in Dallas and you're a who's who and you got a big house, like you're calling that company. And he shows examples of that over and over and over. So it can be tactical like that, or it can be, philosophical and you're like adding value to people. Regardless, that is not how you're driving your business. It's not the thing that's driving your business, most likely. And so I think the key that you're trying to give to the listener here, Jake, is, does it need to be inside of the swirl of to do and something that they need to be building? Yes. Should they, take their eyes off of the current thing that they're building so that they can build a personal brand? No. And I've seen that happen, too many times, where they think, well, I'm going to start a podcast, or I'm going to whatever, and it's going to be my main source. And it's just not going to be, it's just not going to be. I've seen constant videos of people coming to Gary Vee, and asking about content. And he's like, Have you created 5 posts a day for the last year? And if not, don't even think about coming to me. It's just going to take a lot for you to have this major momentum in your personal brand. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it. It just means that don't be naive to think that all of a sudden, boom, tomorrow you're going to be Haktua and
Yeah.
and be able to take off running. Maybe, sure, make the videos that you like that might get you into that spot. I'm not saying don't strategize around what you can do social media to grow, but at the same time, mirror what works for you, your schedule, and your business. Because when I think about priorities, when I think about what moves the needle, it's like, okay, well, yeah, you probably need leads, but the likely chance of your personal brand getting you leads today is not very high. The likely chance of you getting leads from authority because you've done a little bit on your brand every day the last 3 years is probably pretty high. And so that'd be my suggestion, is just work on it a little bit every day, and then let the main thing be the main thing.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I actually want to speak a little bit more about that, because there's the dynamic between you and I that I think is at play here, right? I've watched you invest time, money, and energy into developing your personal brand. And it's something that I have been very standoffish about, because naturally I'm more introverted as a person.
Right.
And I like to use social media as kind of a voyeur's window into the rest of the world, and not necessarily put myself out there, because that's comfortable for my personality. And recently you've challenged me around this, not that I need to have a personal brand because we're using that as a lead source for gathering the kings, but I do get the opportunity to speak on stages with you, and when someone is looking up Chaz Wolfe and Jake Isaacs, there needs to be some level of authority behind me that like makes people believe that I'm not just the throwaway on the stage next to you, right? That's
Right.
filling time, that there actually is some value in me being present.
Yeah.
And so just getting myself outside of my comfort zone and doing those once a day posts, and trying to be more intentional about that. I think that it's important, regardless of what the business vehicle
Right.
is, or what your intentions are around social media,
Yeah.
having some type of content to leverage your authority.
Yeah. I think the consistency piece there is probably the hit home, the action step for the listener. It's like, first off, just get started. Don't overthink it. You're not gonna, go viral tomorrow, most likely. And I'm not saying don't think negatively about it. I'm just saying the real situation is that you just need to post something, and you'll start to slowly tweak in that. I mean, we're 3 years in here, 3+ years into creating content, and we're very much still figuring out what hits and where we go and what adds value, and that's the game, and that's okay. But I also don't spend so much time on creating content and or money to where I feel like I like it has to be Hermosi style and it has to be in person. Like, I would love to do in-person podcasts, and I'm sure we'll do them at some point in the near future, just because that's kind of like the next level up. But we've done over 500 episodes just like this because it's gotten it done. We've interviewed some amazing people. We've added value to people who've been listening to our show now for 3+ years. And guess what? When someone looks up Driven to Win or Gathering the Kings or Chaz Wolfe or Jake Isaacs, there's so much content that it's like, oh, well, these guys have been doing this for a while. It's not new. And that was just a decision that we made a long time ago to be consistent with just little bits each week and just to keep posting, basically, So it doesn't have to be an overwhelmed, you don't have to overthink about it. Even like right before we started this show here, you kind of threw out some topics and we had, kind of trying to dwindle it down. And I'm like, none of that really hits for me right now. So like, let's just not, And sometimes that's all it is just being authentic about who you are and what you're feeling and what you're excited about. And, this one was exciting. And so we decided to kind of hash on this one the last couple of days. And now we're recording here today, but it's like, I'm not going to just try to force something either. One, it's not that important. Two, I don't want to be not authentic either, So I just think capture the moments. You're going to see us do this with the TikTok channel with Julie and I don't know how many we're going to do. I don't know how many each day or week. We're not going to put a process to any of that. We're just going to start posting. And I'm probably going to keep the same general mindset in my mind of, hey, let's do a couple of these and let's have a regular cadence to when we record and let's have fun with it. but let's also like intentionally post in a way that like maybe we do catch some momentum, and if not, no big deal. But I'm going to at least do it in a consistent way to where, 2 or 3 years from now, there's going to be a whole channel of really funny, hopefully super relatable, authentic videos of me and her and the family that probably at that point will drive business to Gathering the Kings, and Generation Next and all the cool things we're doing for families.
Yeah.
But maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah, no. And my other piece of encouragement around this is if you're someone that's camera shy and doesn't want to record videos of, TikTok dances like you and Julie are going to do, that's fine. If you like the written word more, then post, use social media as like your mini blog. You have an 11-year-old daughter, and she is hilarious, and she will be the girl that will go viral because of all of the crazy videos that she makes, because that's her personality. She loves the limelight and the spotlight, and she will do that. But your second daughter is not that way. But I could totally see her using social media as a platform to like just express her words. And so there's no right way of creating content as long as you're creating content.
Yeah. Yeah. I like it.
Good. Hey man, this is something that we're growing in. This is something that for the listener of Gathering the Kings and Driven to Win, they'll just like follow along because we're in this journey with you.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's been fun too. The process of building something, especially when it's public, is that you get to go back and watch stuff that you've done in the past, and you go, ooh,
Kind of cringy.
that's so interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe we should take that down, But at the same time, it also gives you just a play of the journey, and it's just a game. Really, that's all it is. It's just a game. Just play the game, get in the game, play, get you some minutes in, and I bet you probably figure out what part of the game you like most, and just press in on those things when you find them. So
yeah, exactly. Well, hey man, thanks for spending some time with me today. I really appreciate it. And for the listener, just get started.
Thank you for listening to Driven to Win. I hope that you were able to pull out a few nuggets to go apply into your business right away. More importantly, though, I hope that you're realizing that it takes more to be successful than just being by yourself, doing it all on your own, carrying the weight all by yourself. What I have realized, not only in my own journey from multiple businesses and multiple different industries, and now interviewing over 200 or 300 other very successful 7, 8, and 9-figure business owners, is that it's tough to do it alone. And so Gathering the Kings exists to bring together successful entrepreneurs. In fact, we are putting together 1,000 kings, specifically who are grateful but not done. We're intentionally assembling kings who fight tooth and nail for their business, family, and communities. And here's what we believe: that in the pursuit of excellence in those areas, that it ignites within us the responsibility to govern power and forge a lasting legacy. So if that relates and resonates with you, and you know that you need people around you, sharp, qualified, other very successful business owners, I want you to go to gatheringthekings.com. I want you to take a look at what we're doing and see if it makes sense for you to be part of our pursuit to 1,000 kings. Talk soon.